Hello, everyone. My name's Tom Crandell, and you're listening to another edition of This Week with Tom Crandell. And yes, we have Mr. Producer in studio today. He's back from fixing all his vehicles up in Big Rapids. Good job, Mr. Producer. Jeff, always a pleasure to have you in here. We'll be on air again later this week and on Access Vision 16 and 916 on Comcast here in Battle Creek. And ATT Uverse on channel 99 on channel on Uverse. And those of you who don't live in Comcast or Uverse territory, sorry, you're out of luck. But you can catch it on Facebook This Week with Tom Crandell. You're welcome to check the show out there and see what we do here. The news cycle got vacuumed up pretty much this last week with the release of this guy in Afghanistan, this Army specialist who walked off his base. And it was like a giant Hoover vacuum cleaner, just sucked everything off the news. And it's like that physics game with all the balls, Newton's, where, one little action here and everything goes spinning off there. It's quite remarkable, really. There's anybody who's actually paying attention, I'm sure our listeners are paying attention to what's going on there. You kind of wonder what would drive anyone to release 5 4-star generals. And whether this guy is a deserter or not, he'll get his day in court, but it doesn't matter who the prisoner was. 4-star generals, 5 of them were released. We'll touch a little bit base on Mr. Bowe and his situation as we get through the program. You're listening to WBCK News Talk Radio. The number is 441-9595 if you care to join in. If you are listening to the show online at WBCKFM.com, you can listen to the show online. The show can also be streamed on iHeartRadio. And that's all the programming here at WBCK News Talk Radio. I did get some clarification from those who know that there are certain words I can say. So we might fit those words in today. I don't know. We'll see what's going on with that. As always, we do This Week in Military History. And what we have going on today in June, I don't know how they know this, in the year 632. It's beyond me. In Medina, that would be in current modern-day Saudi Arabia, Muhammad, one of the most influential religious and political leaders in history, dies in the arms of Aisha, his third and favorite wife. I'm sure he didn't tell that to the first two, but it was his most favorite wife. Why I mentioned that, I don't know. And it jumped out at me. It was also first on the list. June 8th, 1874. Chief Cochise, one of the great leaders of the Apache Indians in their battles with the Anglo-Americans, dies on the Chiricahua Reservation in southeastern Arizona. Little is known of Cochise's early life. My guess is he was a hunter-gatherer warrior. Probably a pretty safe bet. By the mid-19th century, he had become a prominent leader in the Chiricahua band of the Apache Indians living in southern Arizona and northern Mexico. Like many other Chiricahua Apache, Cochise resented the encroachment of Mexican and American settlers on their traditional lands. Cochise led numerous raids on the settlers living on both sides of the border, so he was an equal opportunity attacker. He did not discriminate against one or the other. Actually, as far as he was concerned, there was probably no border. And Mexicans and Americans alike began to call for military protection and retribution. And that sort of goes to a fellow by the name of Noam Chomsky. If any of you have heard that name, Mr. Producer, does that name ring a bell? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? We're going to talk about Mr. Noam here in a little bit. And it kind of reminds me of what he's talking about as far as terrorism is concerned. 1943, June 8th, 1943. This is odd. I don't know, Jeff, maybe you know what the Zoot Suit riot was? It's vague. Senior military officials bring the Zoot Suit riot under control by declaring Los Angeles off limits to all sailors, soldiers, and Marines. I'm guessing there were a lot of young boys getting wild before they got deployed to the Pacific, but I could be wrong. The Shore Patrol is under orders to arrest any disorderly personnel. The Los Angeles City Council passes a resolution banning the wearing of zoot suits in public, punishable by a 50-day jail term. So if you wondered if our rights were being assaulted today, you only have to look back to the 40s. That if you were a law-abiding citizen and you wore a zoot suit, I'm sorry, that you would be doing 50 days in jail. June 8, 1965, a State Department press officer notes that, quote, American forces would be available for combat support together with the Vietnamese forces when and if necessary, alerting the press to an apparently major change in the U.S. commitment to the war. Prior to this time, U.S. forces had been restricted to protecting American air bases and other installations. This, I think, is called mission creep. 1995, and I thought this was terribly appropriate, given the news of the week. June 8th, 1995, a Marine Tactical Recovery Team from the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit stationed on board the USS Kearsarge rescued a downed U.S. pilot, Captain Scott O'Grady, from Bosnian Serb territory in Bosnia. What a wonderful thing that was. Now, Scott O'Grady did serve with honor, and he did serve with distinction, and our Marines went and got him. They fished him out of enemy territory. They didn't figure out a way to give up Slobodan Milosevic. Of course, at the time, they didn't have him in their possession. But they just used America's 911 force to get him. An American soldier, don't leave him behind. But there's ways to get him, and there's ways not to get him. All right, 441-9595. You're welcome to join the program. If you are calling from Kalamazoo area, it's free call 269-488-9595. But I'll tell you, I don't think we've ever had a call from Kalamazoo. So it'd be fun to maybe get somebody on the line. I'll see what the weather's like over in Kalamazoo, because I know it was a beautiful day today. I'd seen a piece, 9 soldiers were asked why they joined the armed forces. And let's see, where is this? Okay, first reason. They fight for country. Number 2, an honorable one. They preserve freedom. These are noble causes, honorable, distinctive causes. I think one of the people said, I enlisted to preserve our freedom. I think more people should do the same. Some just have a sense of duty. They do it to serve. Here, this soldier, I joined the Army to serve, and I hope that one day my family will be proud and not resent my decision to do so. I still love them even through it. Number 4, the 4th reason they join, they make a difference. I joined the Marines to prove to my friends and family I could actually do something with my life. They want to make a difference. They're using their life to do it. These are 9 reasons that reveal why they joined the armed forces. Maybe some of you volunteered, maybe in the 60s, maybe later. Why'd you join? This is some of their reasons. Protect the family. Conquer fears. I became a soldier. Let's see. I joined the Marines to get over my fears. Well, that's a quick way of doing it. I think all of us probably have known a Marine in our lives or met one. And these are pretty solid folks. Let's see. Number 7. They do it to save lives. Now you could become a nurse or a doctor. Or you can join here. I became a soldier, not to take lives, but to save them and to make a difference in the world. And I think our armed forces do that. Because whenever any country gets in trouble, who do they call? They call us. Let's see, number 8. And this might upset some people. I don't think any of our listeners would be upset by this, but why did they join? For country, despite what others think. In this particular whisper, they're calling these answers whispers. A soldier not only reveals why she joined the armed forces, but claims people hate on her for serving in the U.S. Army. And she produces a selfie, and, she's very proud. She says, people hate on me for being in the Army. I don't care. I'm fighting for my country. And my father died in 9/11, and that's the reason I do this. So these are, I thought you might want to know from our service members themselves why they joined the military, and that's one of the reasons why. Now, in the past, got a break coming up in a couple minutes, but we're gonna touch on this a little bit. In the past, I've run segments called Econ 401, Econ 101, and it's kind of designed to focus on economic issues, microeconomic issues, your job, your checking account, your cost of electricity, standard of living, things like that. And I've mentioned world's reserve currency. And that's, today we just take it for granted. It's the U.S. dollar. And I've mentioned that our standard of living is going to tank should that status ever change. And there are examples throughout the world of other countries wanting to trade products, goods, and services in currencies other than the U.S. dollar because they see what the Federal Reserve is doing by printing money, this quantitative easing. Well, have any of you ever heard of something called the renminbi? I did that right, I think. Renminbi. R-E-N-M-I-N-B-I. Renminbi. Have any of you heard of this? I didn't know this. I thought the Chinese currency was the yuan. It's not. The Chinese currency is actually, let me find it here. The currency itself is actually referred to as the renminbi. The yuan is part of it's like the sterling and the pound. And recently, let's see, holy cow, I can't believe I lost it. Oh, well, I'll do it from memory. The Chinese government is offering incentives to corporations in America to trade in the Chinese currency rather than U.S. dollars. And it reminds me of leading a dog with a biscuit. If you produce the biscuit, the dog will follow. And it slashes costs of Chinese imports like they're not cheap enough as it is. And it's camel's nose in the tent. And we're going to go to the break. We will be right back. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Let the good times roll. Let's not pay attention. Nothing to see here. Just keep right moving along. Hello, everyone. My name's Tom Crandell, and we are here doing another edition of This Week with Tom Crandell. Mr. Jeff's in the studio, filming for his Access Vision here in Battle Creek. Number's 441-9595. If you care to join along, we'd love to have you join the show. Kalamazoo, 269-488-9595. It is WBCK News Talk Radio, 95.3 on your terrestrial FM dial. Now, I did find the renminbi. It's the official currency of the People's Republic of China. The name literally means people's currency. Who cares about that? It just happens to be the name. The yuan is the basic unit of the renminbi, but is also used to refer to the Chinese currency generally, especially in international contexts. The distinction between the terms renminbi and yuan is similar to that between the sterling and the pound, which respectively refers to the British currency and its primary unit. And then it goes on to the yuan is one of 10 of the jiao and subdivided into 10 whatever. I can't read Chinese. The interesting thing is it's the renminbi use surges in the home of the U.S. dollar. That's right here in the United States. The renminbi is the monetary equivalent of what Chairman Mao called bombarding the headquarters. China's renminbi is rapidly displacing the U.S. dollar as a trading currency not only in Asia and Europe, but now also directly in the U.S. home market. The value of renminbi payments between the U.S. and the rest of the world rose by 327% in April of this year from the same month a year ago, as more U.S. corporations switched to using the Chinese currency to pay for imports from China. The reasons driving the upsurge are structural and long-term. First, U.S. importers can slash the cost of imports from China by agreeing to trade in renminbi rather than U.S. dollars. And that's where the dogs following the bone analogy came in. I mean, if you offer U.S. corporations an opportunity to decrease expenses and there's no wrinkles in the rest of the system, they're going to do it. Now, it turns out a recent surge in the popularity of a host of renminbi-denominated financial market instruments are making it easier for U.S. corporations both to hedge currency risk and to earn an investment return from the renminbi they hold. This is a long-term problem, and it is one that is going to just, let the good times roll, just let it go on. But we are slowly, but doggedly so, moving towards a point where we will be dropped as the world's reserve currency. May not be in my lifetime, but it may be in our children's lifetimes. And then it begs that question, what kind of country is our children going to inherit? Well, you draw your own conclusions from that. All right, next up. I wanted to talk about and bring up this Bergdahl thing, only to the extent, I really kind of hate talking about it because it really doesn't make any sense. In fact, there was a law signed, and President Obama signed the law in, I believe, 2013. I strike that. I believe it was in 2010, possibly. But it has to do with releasing prisoners from Gitmo. If we just ratchet the clock back a little bit, President Obama campaigned on the fact he was going to close Gitmo. But he didn't bank on the fact that his own party wouldn't support him in either the House or the Senate. And so he hit a brick wall. Well, he hadn't won the second re-election yet. He didn't have the flexibility. So he pulled back, and that was that. Why someone would release 5 four-star generals, specifically requested by our enemy, a terrorist group. I mean, that should be the first clue. Now, President Obama is not stupid. He's not. In fact, he's very, very cunning. And I think that's the point. The trick is to try to pick out of it the logic that his administration used, or what's behind the scenes, what's driving these decisions. No one buys for a minute that he has this long-standing policy to not let people stay. In fact, let's see. Here we go. Let's see what he has to say about this.
We're going to do everything we can to bring them home, and we saw an opportunity and we took it. And I make no apologies for it. It was a unanimous decision among my principals in my government.
No. What?
We're going to do everything we can to bring them home.
Okay.
And we saw an opportunity and we took it.
Ooh. We saw an opportunity. We took it.
And I make no apologies for it.
And I make no apologies for
it. It was a unanimous decision.
Unanimous decision. Except it wasn't a unanimous decision. All his military wonks said, no, don't do it. But this is what's interesting.
Among my principles.
Among my principles, of which our military leaders apparently do not belong.
In my government.
Oops. Did he say my government? Mr. Producer, did he say that? Did he say my government? I'm not sure if he did or not.
We're going to do everything we can to bring them home.
Yeah, okay.
And we saw an opportunity and we took it.
Yeah.
And I make no apologies for it.
No, I wouldn't expect them to.
It was a unanimous decision.
No, the intelligence community didn't want to do it either, sir. And also, all your Democrat senators in the Senate were against it years ago, back in June of 2013. I guess that wasn't years ago. It's just about a year ago.
Among my principles in my government.
My principles in my government. I didn't know his government, or the government, was his government. Did you? 4419595. I did not know that. That's news to me. It's not getting reported much. But they're saying at first his health was in jeopardy. He was going to die, except the camera, even they got doctors on TV. The guy looks healthy. He walks fine. Didn't need any help walking. Well, when that blew over, when some people blew holes in that argument of why we gave away 5 4-star generals, then it was, well, if we'd have gone to Congress and obeyed the law, if it were leaked, he'd have been killed. So he's saying Congress would leak the information. So that's kind of the faith he has in his own government, because it's not government of the people, it's his government. All right, more. The Independent Payment Advisory Board was created by the Affordable Care Act, and it is a board tasked with managing healthcare dollars, managing the expenses of healthcare dollars. Yeah, the president has judicial oversight, but IPAB doesn't. I'm telling you, this is scary. Mr. Producer, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who watches the show on Axis Vision. Jeff and I are flattered that you would tune in and listen in. I would invite you to pay attention right on your calendar. Sundays at 6. It's live. You're welcome to call us, 441-9595. I think that's about 10 seconds of that song, so we should be getting banned in Ireland and Scotland this week, right? Okay, there you go. But I know our listeners appreciate that music, and I do too. It's a beautiful rendition of Amazing Grace. Hello, everyone. My name's Tom Crandell. You're listening to This Week with Tom Crandell. We would be the microphone operators here at the station tonight, and I do understand all the doors are locked, so we're the only ones here. So what words can I say? I don't know. We'll see if we can't fit some of that in. We were talking about Bergdahl before the break, and we'll delve a little further in that. Clearly, the law is there was no will of the people to close Gitmo. There's no will of the people to send the prisoners to New York to stand trial in a civilian court with lawyers and cross-examination and this, that, and the other thing. And that's why in a Defense Authorization Act, our legislators and our senators inserted the language that the White House must give Congress 30 days advance notice before they release any prisoners. They didn't. And they're wiggling here. And they're saying that, well, the president, when he signed the bill, he did that executive signing statement. He did the executive signing statement. I was pretty sure that, no, we didn't get that. In June of 2008, he campaigned on Bush. He just railed against Bush for his signing statements. And it's not so much the statements themselves, it's what you do with them. The president, apparently, I don't know who gave any president the authority that when they sign a bill, that all they need to do is write on a piece of paper, oh, by the way, I disagree with this, I disagree with that, and this section, that section. I'm not going to enforce that or some other provision. It's executive signing. I don't know who in the world gave any president that authority. Our founding forefathers didn't. And all President Obama has done is took George Bush's signing statements and put it on steroids. Now, if you just compare the numbers of statements, because the left will say, well, Bush did 1,200, and Obama hasn't done that many. No, but Bush was president for 8 years, and Obama has only been in for like 6 now, so give him some time. Especially when you think about what he did with the Gitmo prisoners. His executive signing statement said he thought that Congress was usurping the executive branch authority. Well, rather than go back to Congress and negotiate new language and have the bill amended, he just waits, and when it's convenient, he releases it. I think this Bergdahl thing's got John Podesta written all over it. John Podesta is a serious wonk. Big Clinton supporter. He's been laying low with political action committees and groups, but President brought him on after this second win. And you'll see him walking quite often, walking from Marine One, the helicopter, and Air Force One. He's with the president, and that says something. If you're walking with the president, there is a pecking order. But why would they give away 5 4-star generals at all to Qatar, and say, well, they're not really a threat, or they could be a threat. They all could be a potential threat, and well, we know much of the president's policies won't go through Congress. He just can't get support of the Democrats, let alone the Republicans. So is there another way to close Gitmo? And that is, well, if we give away the 5 worst of the 165 that were left in Gitmo, if we pick the 5 worst terrorists in that prison and get rid of them, well, then all the others are no-brainers, right? I mean, they're not nearly as bad as the first group. So it'll be 2 here and 3 here and 5 here. Recently, a prisoner learned yoga, and that's got him on the fast track of being released. Talibani learned yoga. I wonder if he wears yoga pants. I hear those are real popular. Jay Carney, 2013. No decisions about, this is among the questions being raised about this weekend's exchange of this fella for 5 top Taliban commanders held at Gitmo is why Congress was not informed of the move ahead of time. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, useless, said to Meet the Press that concerns over the health and perhaps even the survival required secrecy. We couldn't afford any leaks anywhere because the deal was essentially an operation to save the life of this man. But just under a year ago, in June 2013, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney was unequivocal in his response to reporters' questions about this very deal, because this came up a year ago. Quote, we would not make any decisions about transfer of any detainees without consulting with Congress and without doing so in accordance with U.S. law. But they didn't. So Jay Carney is on record saying they won't do it. And then they did it. And they get away with it. I think Lindsey Grahamnesty said, well, if you do it again, we're going to impeach you. Well, if you violate the Constitution one more time, we're going to really hold your feet to the fire. The administration took the senators in behind a closed-door session, briefed them. And they all came out frustrated. They've got more questions than the answers they got. And so the senators are unhappy. Now we have John Lynch Kerry. Lurch. He looks like Lurch from the Addams Family. I'll bet you could get on the Facebook, Lurch and John Kerry. This was, published, it was published today. Secretary of State John Kerry said Sunday the Taliban detainees released in a prison swamp for this fella could indeed return to terrorism, but largely dismissed the argument that the deal will put U.S. troops further at risk. It's like, what planet is he living on? Kerry told CNN State of the Union the argument that troops in Afghanistan would be more at risk was baloney now that the Taliban commanders have been released, particularly because the U.S. is winding down its military presence in that, because their doctrine is if you don't hate these people and you don't do anything against them, they'll like us. And they always say we're ending the war in Afghanistan. No, you're just quitting your side of the war. The war's still going to go on. But they get away with this dupe speak. Our combat role in Afghanistan is over, Kerry said. We're going to have very few people in that kind of position, meaning these 5 generals will have a more concentrated target base to go after and fear them less as far as retribution because there'll be no strike capabilities. And, of course, Mogadishu comes back up. We have people there. They're not defended by armor. The first 200 Taliban that run over one of our posts, boom. But by then, maybe President Obama will be out of office and it won't be his problem. Kerry argued that detainees released June 3rd to the Qatar government could return to battle, but with a big risk for deadly consequences, he says. I just think that's a lot of baloney because to whatever degree it may be true, they will wind up putting themselves at the mercy of those people who are very effective at who they are there, who will deal with those guys. I am not telling you that they don't have some ability at some point to go back and get involved, but they also have an ability to get killed if they do that. I'm sorry, that's wrong on every level. I mean, they're in a war. I mean, that's what you take that risk on when you. I think that Sergeant Bergdahl, or I hesitate to call him sergeant. He didn't earn that rank. He was a private when he deserted. So I think he's really a private. Unless the punishment for desertion is more severe if you're a sergeant, in which case I want to call him a sergeant. Let's see. Mother of a Marine or an Army guy killed while searching for Bergdahl suggested it on Fox News Sunday that the detainee release combined with troops leaving Afghanistan is a massacre waiting to happen for the U.S. military personnel who will remain in the region. Of course, Kerry strongly disagrees with her. He defended the decision to recover this private amid overwhelming evidence he deserted his post. What I know today is what the President of the United States knows, which they only ever learn that on the news, that it would have been offensive and incomprehensible to consciously leave an American behind no matter what. Well, wait a minute. If we pull many combat troops out and still leave thousands there, like they're purporting, 9,500, then we didn't leave the country. No, there's another agenda here. And I think it's to close Gitmo. His legacy is no Gitmo, out of Afghanistan, and he's accomplishing it. I think I have to give the Obama administration some real credit here because they're able to pull off with the flexibility of no longer having to face re-election. They're able to pull off, and in fact, this whole Bergdahl thing flies in the face of what our people's houses. As much as we detest Congress, they are the only ones representing us, right? We have no other choice. But he can't get his plans through them, so he's off on his own with the pen and the phone. And Podesta perfected the pen and the phone during the Clinton administration. He's the heavy hitter. He's carrying the water. He's back in this administration. I think we're looking to some real fireworks with what this White House is going to pull off in the next 2 years, really. And it's a steamrolling operation. In fact, I think you ought to see what I have here. No, texting is worse than drunk driving. No, that's not it. The cap and trade thing. This is just an example of what this administration wanted to do well before 2008, even when he started to campaign. But when he campaigned, he didn't say things like this.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system.
Now, cap and trade system is taxing you or penalizing you monetarily, corporations, for carbon dioxide that you emit.
Electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket.
Whoa! What did he say? Did they? And they'll only skyrocket for those who voted for Romney and McCain.
Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases.
Greenhouse gases, he's calling them.
Coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
And, of course, it will only affect consumers that voted for John McCain and Mitt Romney, because Obama consumers do not have light switches or any electric appliances in their homes and apartments, condominiums, trailers, wherever they live. There's no electricity there. Only Republicans, the ones who are stopping him from achieving his objective, are going to pay these higher electricity rates. What do you think would have happened if he'd have been honest with the electorate when he was running for president? He said that. But recently, the EPA, through the power of the pen, has absolutely implemented the cap-and-trade goals. They don't call it cap-and-trade, but he went around Congress with his pen and his phone. Now, hopefully, down the road, that can be undone. But in the meantime, I think our electricity rate, and I talked about that a month ago, electricity rates have never been higher, and they are only going up. So here we have the release of these. It wasn't for that man, that private. These terrorists, Gitmo's getting closed, gang. Mark my words, by January 2017, right? Yeah, 2017. Gitmo will be empty. And maybe we'll have, if they do enter the battlefield, and they will, that one guy, that Nori guy, already said he's coming back. And Qatar's got him in a 5-star villa, room service. The Taliban even have offices in Qatar. These guys are going to these offices. They can roam the whole country. They are recharging their batteries. They're getting up to speed. And they're going to double down, and they'll be back in Afghanistan at first opportunity. I don't doubt for a minute they'll be gone after or before their year is up. So, all thing that we really do know about the Bergdahl, this private Bergdahl swap, is it wiped the VA debacle off the news. And all we need is another thing like this, and we had them, and that's why Benghazi's off the news, although many are holding on to that. Fast and Furious, that's so, that just reminds me of that Tommy Vitor. I like him.
Talking about. According to the emails and the timeline, the CIA circulates new talking points after they've removed a mention of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
And then at 6:21, the White House, add a line about the administration warning of September 10th of social media reports calling for demonstrations. True?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Did you also change attacks to demonstrations in the talking points?
Maybe. I don't really remember.
Maybe. I don't really remember.
You don't remember?
Dude, this was like 2 years ago. We're still talking about...
Dude, that's like 2 years ago. Dude.
I know that, dude. I know that, dude.
Yeah, I know that dude. That dude is one of our advisors to the president, for crying out loud. Holy smokes. Well, we have a break coming up here in just about 10 seconds. On the backside, we're going to get into some of those other things and see if we can't have you call in 441-9595. Love to have you join the show. Yeah, little cars bringing back a little 70s and 80s back to the airwaves. Hello, everyone. Tom Crandell. Another Sunday night here at WBCK News Talk Radio, 95.3 FM. Lighten up the dial for just a few more minutes here, 4419595. There's still time to get on the show. Just in case you were worried, don't worry anymore. There's a new federal database that's going to track our credit ratings. Oh, and other information, too. As many as 227 million Americans may be compelled to disclose intimate details of their families and financial lives, including their Social Security numbers. Really? I mean, don't they already have that? In a new national database being assembled by 2 different federal agencies. Okay, so you'd want to think one of them was the IRS, maybe. Maybe one of them was, I don't know, the IRS. Does there need to be another one? But this one's the Federal Housing Finance Agency and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's such a warm name. I love that name. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's like, I want to go work there. Posted on April 16th in the Federal Register, notice of an expansion of their joint National Mortgage Database Program to include personally identifiable information that reveals actual users, a reversal of previously stated policy. FHFA, that'd be the Federal Housing Finance Agency, will manage the database and share it with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, the Bureau internal planning document for 2013 through 2017 describes the Bureau as monitoring 95% of all mortgage transactions. Now, the Federal Housing Finance Authority or agency, those officials claim the database is essential to conducting a monthly mortgage survey required by the Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008 and to help it prepare an annual. It's essential. I mean, that's what made this country great. It's the founding forefathers put in the Constitution that our credit ratings have to be monitored. No, wait a minute. I don't think they did that. Oh, they should have done it. Except the one thing they did do. So if you're worried about the government not getting enough information out, you don't have to worry about that anymore. But there is one thing, kind of goes to this man who says things like this. What is this? Here it goes.
We're going to do everything we can to bring them home. And we saw an opportunity and we took it. And I make no apologies for it. It was a unanimous decision among my principals in my government.
My principals in my government. Was that a slip? Did he mean to say my administration? Because it is his administration. But I got news for you, sir. It is not your government. It is not your government. This was back in, I have an article here, Dave Boyer from the Washington Times, May 23rd, 2014. President Obama is taking a swipe at the Founding Fathers, blaming his inability to move his agenda on the, quote, disadvantage of having each state represented equally in the Senate. At a Democrat fundraiser in Chicago, of all places, Mr. Obama told a small group of wealthy supporters, now these were probably all Republicans because they're wealthy, that there are several hurdles to keeping Democrats in control of the Senate, because that's their goal, of course. It's not to protect and defend the Constitution or to protect and defend the citizens. It's to control the Senate and recapture the House. Bonus. One of these problems, he said, is the apportionment of 2 Senate seats to each state regardless of population. This comes from a guy who taught Constitution history for 10 years, he claims. Quote, obviously, that's why I like people with you, obviously. How condescending. Obviously, the nature of the Senate means that California has the same number of Senate seats as Wyoming. And this is what scares me. Quote, that puts us at a disadvantage, Mr. Obama said. The Founding Fathers decided in the Great Compromise in 1787 to apportion House seats based on population. And the Federalist Papers were very clear about this. They wanted a branch of government to represent the people. That would be based on population. Then we had the House of Representatives. But they gave each state representation in the federal government in the Senate, where each state would be represented by 2 seats, regardless of population. The solution was a compromise between large states and small states, populous states and not so populous states. And of course, this dispute actually almost dissolved the Constitution. The president also blamed demographics for the inability of the Democrat Party to gain more power in Congress, saying Democrats tend to congregate a little more densely in cities such as New York and Chicago. He said it gives Republicans disproportional clout in Congress. Whoa. So there are some structural reasons why. It's not messaging. It's not ideas out in the universe ideas. It's structural. The Constitution is rigged. It's rigged against the Democrats. So there are some structural reasons why, despite the fact that Republican ideas are largely rejected by the public, that's why 34 states are ruled by Republican houses and senates and governors, but it's largely rejected by the public, it's still hard for us to break through. I'm sorry, Mr. President. It's not your government. In the Senate, its purpose isn't to get you in power. That's enough to make me want to throw up. And if Bush was doing this and saying this, I'd be doing the same darn thing. I can say darn. I finally got. Tim approved that word, darn. You did, Tim. I know you did. You said so. All right. Noam Chomsky. All right, real quick. This is just like recently. Daily Caller. Just this month. Chomsky, Obama determined to demolish the foundations of our civil liberties. We're going to get into, there's not near enough time right now. But this is a guy who is a anarchist. He's a best-known figure of the American left. He considers himself a libertarian socialist. We're going to talk about Mr. Noam because he and I see eye to eye in a few things. It's quite fascinating, really. Don't worry about the insurance companies with Obamacare. That's right. Just recently, they changed the law. There's billions more. And it is, everybody keeps saying Obamacare is going to die. It's not. They keep saying the rates are going to go up. Well, guess what? They've rigged the law now where the insurance companies can defer losses for years now and raise the rates just in small increments. And you and I get to back them up. All right. We just have a few seconds left, and we're about to hit the pavement running, going home. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week, another edition of This Week. We're not bounced by tigers, but we will be in studio, and I hope Mr. Jeff's here. If not, we'll wish him well. You guys have a great week.